All right, in this episode, we talk about hip mobilities in the pitching delivery
and examples of pitchers with hip mobility issues.
All right, Brent Porcio, Steve Godani here at the @TopVelocity hashtag Pitch Tips Show, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat @TopVelocity hashtag Pitch Tips hashtag Baseball Tips. Ask your question, we answer on the show. Snapchat's been really big. A lot of stuff going on there. Our story is kicking ass. Steven's been doing a lot of good stuff that you can see. A lot of the lift drills and exercises that we use in our training here, which is going on in the back. Which helps, going to add ball speed. It's going to help with injury prevention. You know, everything we do here to develop the high velocity pitcher. So go check that out if you haven't checked it out. And today is going to be a good show. So if you haven't sent in a question, please send in a question. But we got a question for today, so let's get started. Just Living asks, what are some signs of hip mobility issues in a pitcher's delivery? Any telltale signs? All right, good question, Just Living. So some of the signs in pitching delivery that's going to probably means that you have some hip related issues are going to be obviously in your ability to get hip rotation at all. So to be able to get hip rotation in a full stride, you have to have good internal rotation of the dominant hip, the drive hip, and good abduction or extension, meaning the ability to pull the knee behind the back. So if you're limited, which a lot of guys who come into camp, they'll be like 5 to 10 degrees in the ability to pull in the knee behind the hip or behind the back. So what happens is you're gonna get into this good loaded position, and then you're gonna go to drive and you're gonna be stuck. So what happens is it compromises hip rotation, and that affects hip to shoulder separation, and that affects energy coming up the chain, because studies show weakness and inflexibility in the hip is a potential area for a break in the kinetic chain. So when you can't when your mobility prevents that good hip rotation, you have a break in the chain, so the energy doesn't efficiently move up the chain. So you're that guy who feels like he's driving, but he doesn't feel any dynamics in the trunk. And that's typically someone who you won't see much hip rotation. So if you don't have a lot of hip rotation, it's probably because you have poor internal rotation, you have poor abduction, you have poor extension, all the things that would turn the leg out and pull the leg back. That's going to really limit your ability to bring drive power up the chain. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to talk about Hunter Strickland on the Giants, but then just thinking about it, I was like, going to go back to Tim Lincecum, even though we talk about it all the time, with his just recent surgery on his hip impingement. So he realized that he had a hip issue. It's his, I think it was his right hip on his drive leg was impinged, and it wasn't allowing him to transfer the energy from the ground up through the chain. And he even said that in an awesome quote, which I'm still trying to find, that we'll put back up there, that he was saying I was driving from my legs and it wasn't transferring. My hip was impinged and it wasn't letting me transfer the energy up to my arms. So I think that's a really good example of it as well.
I mean, hips, guys, we've known it for years. Hips are huge to the pitching delivery, specifically a total body delivery, because it really what allows you to connect the lower half to the upper half movements. The lower half puts force in the ground, the upper half transfers that into elastic energy, you know, the eccentric loading and then unloading, the catapulting, okay? But if you take away the ground forces, it forces you to overcompensate. And then a lot of studies show that's where a lot of wear and tear comes from. That's where a lot of the torques come from when you're not getting the energy up the chain. So you could be someone who has really great legs. You've got a good vertical jump, you're very strong and explosive, but you're still overcompensating in your upper half, and that's because either you don't understand the movements well, or you're not, your hips are tight, immobile, and it's not allowing you to get good hip rotation and the hip shoulder separation, or connect the lower half to the upper half parts of the body. So that's a good question. Next question. Just Living asks, highlight a past, present MLB pitcher you've analyzed with hip mobility issues, if possible. All right, Just Living, we obviously 2 questions on the show because those were 2 good questions back to back. So a pitcher that I see pitching today that have a hip related issue, I would say Matt Harvey's a good one. If you watch Matt Harvey, I'll try to post it right here. you can see when he loads the leg, he kind of collapses a little bit. He does push into extension, but he quickly opens the hips and the leg spins around with it. So it's not like what you would see someone had good hip mobility. They would load, they would extend, and the leg would stay in extension as the hips rotated. When after he extends, when the hips rotate, the knee tucks up under him. That means that hip extension is poor. So his ability to pull his knee behind his back is probably very poor. So he's doing the best he can to get around it by collapsing, extending, and then popping the foot up to flex the leg to get the hip through. But in a way, it's not as efficient, and it's not as effective in creating good hip to shoulder separation for him. You can see when he hits front foot, his hips aren't as all the way through as he could get them through, which would be better for him to transfer energy up the chain. So I think that's why he's had Tommy John surgery, because a lot of studies link hip mobility issues to more loads on the UCL. First of all, you're not going to separate well. Your arms are probably going to want to push out in front of your face, or there's going to be some overcompensation to make up for that lack. I think he does the best he possibly can to get around it, but it's obviously he has some hip mobility issues. I would even say even internal rotation issues. That's where you could probably throw in Hunter Strickland.
Yeah, I mistake the questions. I thought this one was the last one, but anyway.
Too much Snapchat.
Exactly, I'm not paying attention. But yeah, so I'll just throw in Hunter Strickland here. So Hunter Strickland is a big, strong, powerful dude with a really short stride, awesome front leg, but you can tell that he's got hip problems going on because the stride is really short. So that's probably meaning that he has a poor hip abduction, not letting him get down the mound. And then he has a really rotational back leg, but that's a sign of probably good internal rotation. But just being a big, strong, powerful dude who can squat 500 pounds, just that kind of power can really mask those mobility issues and kind of make up for it. But it is something that you can look and see that over time, if he starts losing some of that power, if he doesn't work to fix some of those mobility issues, he can be putting a lot of wear and tear on the arm.
Right, he hasn't had any arm issues?
He has had Tommy John surgery in 2000.
Right, so it could be the links to his Tommy John surgery. So typically, yes. Typically, you see hip tightness is going to link to more torques on the shoulder, and there's that Florida University study actually showed that. Okay. Good question. If you have a question, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, hit us up on Snapchat. Ask your questions, baseball tips, anything, pitching tips. We'll answer on the show. If you haven't, come down and check 3X camps, and we'll see you on the next episode.